Okay, so here in this video we are going to work on just connecting our textures to create a hyper-realistic network on the shader and look at a few options for that. So in this case we have this creature, this character who has been, UV'd, and he was textured. He was originally textured in Mudbox, but equally textures coming later from ZBrush and Mudbox will work the same way. So we're gonna start. Take a quick look at what the asset that I have here, and I have a color texture, like a rocky color material. We have an incandescence material, which is trying to get some of the glow from those little cracks that this guy has. This actually was painted in Mudbox, but you equally could paint it in ZBrush or in Photoshop. You could go back, and this one is intended to make those kind of lava cracks glow a bit more. Additionally, we have a specular, and again, this one could be painted a material either in Photoshop or in ZBrush or Mudbox if you wanted to try Mudbox, and a displacement map that we have done equally. So we have also a sky dome and a background painting, and that's pretty much it. So let's start by setting up a camera. I'm going to create a new camera, and with that we are going to look through that camera on our scene. Let me just go and change actually my setting here. I'm going to go back to general, and then when I use split my screen here in two and use my new camera on this one. Let me just hide my outliner so I make it easier. I'm going to just zoom out to try to have a quick little look at my guy. Let me just remove the X-ray for there so I can have it a bit easier. And with that camera selected, I'm going to create an image plane for it. So I'm going to say image plane. I'm going to import my image plane. Again, this image plane is going to be just for a preview. We are not going to render out at the end our image as part of our final render, but it will help me set up my whole scene. So I'm going to just say open, and that's my image plane there in front of my guy. If you think about it, and if you look at it, you can see what's going on here. My camera is looking at the image plane, but the image plane is in front of my character. That's why I don't see him there. So if you go to the attribute editor with the camera selected, you can very easily go down here into the image plane. You can select the image plane, and you can see that the image plane has some settings. One of them is the depth. So you can push it, let's say maybe 400. That's plenty enough, so it'll push it behind your character. Now with that already put together there, now I can start finding the best way to position my character in the space. In this case, because it's a flat ground, solid ground, it's very easy, very comfortable for me to do it. If I had a rock or something else, I would have to model the ground. So in this case, I'm going to just put a plane there. I'm going to scale it up, and I'm going to try to align my camera. I will never rotate the plane. The plane, you want to keep it flat. If your ground plane is flat, I'm going to just go do a little bit of rotation here. I'm moving my camera, trying to match the edge of my plane with the edge of the road there. That way I can just extend my plane so it is out of my camera view. I'm going to just turn on my resolution gate here, and this is what my camera is going to see. And I can just go and just put it there, trying to align the camera the best I can. In this case, it's not too difficult. I'm going to stretch my plane even more, and that will be enough for me to set up my guy. And then I'm going to lock my camera. The first thing is taken care of there. Then I'm going to create a my sky dome. So I'm going to just go under Arnold and create my sky dome, and nothing new there. We've done sky domes before. I'm going to bring my sky dome. One thing I want to double check with my sky dome is 124 by 124. It's a 1K, which is 124 by 124. So I'm going to just connect my guy to my color of my sky dome and connect the picture right there. And I'm going to look at it under my texture.com. I'm using the HDR image, so it's an EXR with an HDR, and that one is a 1024. So that means here under my sky dome, I click on the sky dome one more time. On my sky dome, I'm going to change my resolution to 1024. So it's a very key element to know that on your object. And I'm gonna just give it a try first just to see how it looks in terms of lighting. So I'm just gonna do a quick rendering of my camera. So I'm gonna render my camera one. I'm sorry. And then I'm sorry, render camera shape one. Take a peek at it to see how it gives what it gives me just by default. I haven't applied any shaders to my guy. My guy is not ready there, so I'm seeing the lighting is working on him. Background picture is not quite working because the sky dome is being is showing on my scene. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to hide the sky dome from the camera so that I can see it a little bit better. So I'm gonna go and click on my sky dome. I'm gonna scroll down on it, and here in the visibility I'm gonna say, okay, I don't want the sky dome to be visible from the camera, so that my image plane is the only thing that is visible. That way I can do it better. My photograph does not align perfectly for whatever reason, and that is a problem that it's a little bit of an issue that Maya has. When you try to align it here in the preview, it doesn't align correctly there. So what I can do with that, for me to preview, at least to preview it, is either of course try to move my camera to make it match, or try to move my image plane by just simply just moving it up or down with my moving tool. Just move it up or down the best I can. Let's see. I'll click on it. It's not letting me do it. Let's try one more time. If that for whatever reason is locked, let me see. Try one more time. If for that reason is locked, you can go here under the image plane selected, and you can modify the offset. So you can say an X or Y. You can push it up a little bit. When I say, for example, move it 10 units there, too far. I'm gonna say 1.2. It's based on your proportion, your scale. So I'm gonna say 0.1 better. I'm gonna test render that. That's too high. Actually, I have to go negative. So negative 0.1. That's too far. Negative 0.05, and that kind of aligns a little bit better. Again, that's for me pure preview, nothing else. There is not going to give me anything else, because we're gonna set it up to render it later on in I'll do compositing in After Effects. Right now, I need to look at the image for a moment, and kind of align my sky dome with the shadows that the object has. You know, right now my guy is doing shadows from the left to the right, but if you look at my picture there, the shadow is going from the right to the left. So I'm going to just grab my sky dome, rotate it a little bit so that I'm going to click on it here, use my channel box to rotate it in Y so that I can rotate it a little bit more like this way, render it out again until I get the shadow to sort of match my sky dome direction. And that's just pure basic placement of the sky dome dome. All right, let's do the texturing for this guy. So we are going to put this guy here, and we're going to just call our hyper shade. It's not showing up for whatever reason. I'm just going to maybe change here to my rendering standard and see if they give me this chance to see my options. That actually not quite right there. Let me keep it in modeling standard to see if I can get my hyper shader. Not showing. All right, if I'm not getting my hyper shade there, I can try to open it up with these guys here until I find it right there, and then I'm gonna go and call my shaders. Normally this window I don't like it because the attribute editor shows me more details of it, so I'm gonna just minimize that, and I'm gonna call my attribute editor, so I have my attribute editor better to be used there. And I'm going to create a standard shader, and my standard shader is going to be standard surface. It's going to be the one that I'm going to assign to his body. And I'm going to go and look at it through the camera. All right, so I have his body has a standard shader assigned to it right now, and we're going to just simply start connecting things. So pretty straightforward. We've done this before. I'm going to connect the color. So let me get that color connected right there. And for that, I'm going to go into my Hyperreal folder here. And there is the monster. It's called the diffuse file, painted texture. There is my painted texture actually. So I'm going to just open that one. And I'm going to just do a quick test of it so I can see it rendering, how my object will see it. So there we go. That gives me, of course, a basic initial texture of it. Then I'm going to go and connect the displacement, which of course we already know has to be going down to the surface shader here under the, I'm sorry, the shader group. And then we'll go to the shader group node, and then under the displacement mat, I'm going to just click on it and connect it there. And that gives me the node for the displacement. And in this one, when I plug that displacement texture, monster rock, painted, specular, incandescence, displacement, there is. I'm going to say open that one. And that one, of course, give me displacement, but if you render it out, it's going to look pretty bad because it's not set up on the character. You can see, actually, it's not that terribly bad. It's a big character right now, so you can see the displacement being affected, but not quite right. So I'm going to go and push that. I'm going to select the object, go on the attribute editor under the Arnold section, and then turn on under subdivision, turn on my subdivision to cat clerk, crank it up to 4 or 5. 4 is the number that I usually work on, and then I have to modify this height on the displacement attributes. I won't do it yet until I see it. Depending on the scale of your character, that value changes. So there are things that you'll need to modify based on how big your character is. Right now, mine is actually it's a huge character, so the effects are not that visible. You can see it there, but it's not quite right. So I'm gonna just crank it up. Maybe I'm gonna say 3 and render it out again. Sometimes the displacement does not work right away, so you have to close the window and open it again. You can see my displacement is starting to show up right there on his body. It's okay, it's not perfect, but it's doing the job, displacing the rocks here and there, making it a little bit better. I'm gonna keep it like that, and then I'm going to, he's all glossy looking, that's not nice, so that means I need to modify his specularity. Right now he's all kind of wet looking, so what I'm gonna do here is I could manually change the roughness, but I painted again, as I showed you initially, this texture that I could use for whatever is whiter, he's going to be a bit wetter, whatever is darker is going to be kind of dull looking. So, and I'm going to connect that to the roughness. So I'm going to go and try doing that. So I'm going to connect my displacement. I'm looking for my specular. Specular, here it is. So I'm going to open that up, and then I'm going to just see how that comes directly when I render it out. So you see he becomes all dull, and I can look at it. If I go and test out on the character by rendering it out, I could, let's see if I can render out a different camera to see his effect. I'm gonna go through the perspective temporarily here and look at him through the perspective camera to see if that specular is doing anything on his back. Oh, sorry, not that camera. I want to change the camera here to my perspective temporarily so I can see a little bit closer on him, see if that specularity is doing the job. And right now it's not doing much, so let me go and give it a try, modifying it a little bit more to see if I can make it work the way I want it. Right now its roughness is working there. I'm going to start cranking the index of reflection down or modifying it so I can try to get him. Oh, he became too reflective there. I'm kind of bringing it up, and you start seeing that he stays a bit brighter in the areas where the texture is affecting. I don't think it's doing the job quite dramatically as we would like it to be, but it's just modifying him a little bit. I can see a little bit more of that kind of shine on him. It's a little bit more in certain places than other ones, so I think that does it. You see the rock getting a bit more when certain places are duller. I'm gonna keep it like that for now. You can change the color of your specular if you want to do that as well. All right, so then the last thing I'm going to connect on him is that that glow that I have connected to him, and I'm going to just go and say, okay, I'm going to connect to the emission. The emission is the one that gives you glow. I'm going to connect that other texture that has that redness of those cracks. Let me save this file here so we can test it and compare. So this is the one without it. I'm gonna go under the emission. I'm gonna connect that file. So it is the one called incandescence, is this one. I'm gonna say open, and then I'm gonna just go and test render again. So I'm gonna save that one. Hopefully I can see a little bit of difference. I really don't see a lot of difference. So let me double check on it here. I'm going to go and turn it on here. I'm going to speak the emission is off. So I'm going to just bring it all the way up. And then I'm going to test it again. So hopefully that gave me a little bit of difference. I see it changing now. So you can see this is the old one. I just get rid of this one. I'm just gonna go back to my render. That one, I'm gonna store that one. There we go. Now I can compare. You can see the one glowing more than the other one. And of course, you can put any color on it. You can make it maybe orange or yellow and make the redness be a lot more highlighted. Then we go back and look at him through the camera. So I'm going to look through the camera here, and I'm going to try rendering him through that camera again. Let me minimize here. Hopefully I can close it. There you go. I'm going to render the camera one more time. The camera one is the only one that I see in my SkyDome, so that's why he's doing it there. And just so that I can test him on location and everything, I don't have the eye set up right now. I could do create a texture for the eye and just putting a little bit of glossiness on it and everything. That will work great. But I'm gonna put a shader on the ground so that I can visualize him in the environments when I create a shadow matte shader. Let me just clear this one here and clear a shadow matte. I'm gonna assign the shadow matte to the ground plane, so that I can see the character blending a little bit better with the environment, using the SkyDome light as a resource of lighting. You can see he has this warm tone, making him connect with the environment a little bit better. I could play his specularity a bit more. And that could be done actually by saying there are a few things that can be done there to all those shaders actually. So for example, all the shader itself, I can say, for example, the specular roughness, that's a black and white image, is using the alpha information for it. I can change the color balance of it, and I can say alpha is luminance, and sometimes that alpha generates a little bit of a different approach to it. I'm just trying to bring it. You can see that he becomes a little bit shinier. You can see the shine because now the image has a little bit of glossiness. Of course, the samples are low, so that one's not. You can change actually under that shader. You can change a few attributes. Say, for example, exposure, so you can bring your character more or less. You can see I'm making it glossier now, maybe a bit much, but or you can bring it down and fine tune the amount. You can see that there's a little bit less sparkle on it. It's a small amount, but it changes your result. So here you get a guy doing that. So what happens if I, let's pretend I don't want him to look like this and I want him to look more skin-like, or texture is having some subsurface as part of it. And let me do that so that I can change and play with him a little bit more. I'm going to minimize this and I'm going to create a new shader for him. So let me just clear this out. I'm going to create a new shader and I'm going to say that shader is going to be again a standard shader. And this one, I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm going to keep the color actually with a white color. Let me assign that shader to him. Actually, let me just duplicate this guy, and that way I am going to have his brother standing next to him. So duplicate that one and move it over here, so I can have two sitting right next to each other. Okay, that will be better. And this second guy is going to receive that standard shader. So when I have that one, I said again, the base, I'm going to keep it basic. I'm going to call this one subsurface. And then specular, I'm going to bring it down. And him, I want to actually turn off displacement. I don't want him to have displacement. So let me just go back to my non-displacement, making sure that he doesn't have any displacement connected to him. He's just going to be kind of skin-like kind of character. And here, again, keeping the color basic, I'm gonna go under the subsurface. On the subsurface, I have a couple options there for me to play with. One of them is, say for example, I'm gonna turn on subsurface, and I'm going to just put a basic tone here on top that gives me, I'm gonna give him kind of like a orangey tone there, and you can see him right there. Maybe a little too yellow. I'm gonna bring it a bit softer here. And if I render that out, hopefully I can get it here. Hopefully it'll come back on. All right, it seems that I need to close the window launcher again so I can get there my two guys doing it. There it is. So this guy you see here now, that he's kind of beige tone, but he's kind of whitish on it. And then I'm gonna go, and then under the radius, I can play with a different tone. Let me just try to put under the radius. I'm gonna put a sort of purplish pinkish tone. I'm gonna render it out. So you start seeing how the pinkish tone starts making effect under it. So depending on, and you can play with your scale. So based on your scale, you can try to make it more or less visible, so that the color may change. If your object gets to put against the light, you may be able to see through, showing that effect a bit more dramatic. I don't have a backlight here in this case, but I could test it out. But you see how the skin reflects the kind of little bit of a wetness to it. Now, the other option I have is that I could put a texture on each one of those things. One texture being the outer one, the other one. I'm gonna try using this rock texture underneath to see if that gives me a difference. When I connect to that file, that texture, and this is pure exploration. I'm not really totally sure how it's going to look, but let me see. I'm gonna go under my rock diffuse painted. There it is. I'm gonna just connect it there, I'm gonna test render that out. So it is really not picking through heavily, but if I go back to my hypershade, you can see that texture connected right there, and then I can start playing with my scale. I may be able to start, you can start seeing it underneath. I may be able to start showing it a bit more, affecting the exterior color of the guy. You gotta play with the value until you make it work a little bit better. I'm not totally sure if I'm getting it to do the job quite right. I kind of see it a little bit of that kind of semi reddish tone showing on it. So again, it's a matter of playing with the amounts and the values that you want. In this case, again, I was experimenting with it to try to make it work. I'm going to disconnect this one again, and you can put a more reddish tone or a stronger effect on it, so that you can make it work a bit more visible in your character. Um, there it is. Yeah, this one is a lot more vibrant, a lot more saturated. So you can see my texture wasn't strong enough. And again, you play with your scale and your thing. So if you like, let's say you could put if you have kind of those people that have like bad wings and all that, you can try doing some of this on it. If you were to put a light behind him, let me just turn down on this is a pure test. It's not really a good way. Let me just actually let me try to put a light behind him, or better rotate my camera. I'm gonna lock my camera and test render it so you can see the effect. I'm gonna render it from behind him to see if I can get him to. Right now the sky dome is in front of us, so although the image plane is behind him, but I'm gonna try to render out. You can see how the light is peeking through him. And now if I, of course, I call back my shader, I can change my scale, and based on the scale I can make it see through more or less. You see that now this one is giving me the effect differently. I'm gonna try to reconnect this one again to see what does this one do if I use that one as the subsurface radius right there, and then we'll render it out right there. Okay, that affects it again, blocks it again, but you can play again with your scale until maybe you can get the texture to do a different result. You can start seeing it here showing on his the red starts showing on his spikes, and it's a matter of just modifying. The other component you can play with is under the transmission. You can modify his transmission by making him a bit more translucent. And then again, for those of you who are wanting to give a little bit of the kind of membrane type of approach, you can start seeing letting the light peek through a little bit more by using the transmission, not a lot, just a little bit, to let him kind of see a bit more of that effect. So again, it's up to you how you want to use that, but definitely a lot of potential for you to do your rendering on your character. Let me just disconnect here. I kind of like him better with the reddish radius right there. That gives him really a very nice. It's a bit too much right there now, but I can bring it down and control it so I can see through just in certain places. Again, that's the light. When the light is big, is against the camera, when you see the effect a lot more dramatic. All right, hopefully this gives you a good notion of setting up your Hyperreal textures and making your character look appealing and ready to work in your environment.